Get started. Marcy, why don't you go ahead and bring up the first slide? Thanks. All right, good evening. Thank you for attending this evening. My name is Jeff Bear, Superintendent of Los Altos School District. Also here to assist in the presentation are Sandra McGonigal, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, as well as Kimberly Attell, Principal at Oak Elementary School. Also, welcome to our board members who are in attendance to observe tonight's 6th grade town hall. Go ahead and change to the next slide. I wanted to start off with perhaps a question that's on the minds of attendees with the recent news from Governor Gavin Newsom. The Santa Clara County, as well as I think it's 39 other counties in the state of California, have been placed back into the purple level, which is the highest level as cases of coronavirus increase. This has been done as an advanced measure to deal with the anticipated spike in cases. Since Los Altos School District has begun with in-person instruction, we are permitted by the state of California and the Department of Public Health in the state of California to continue with our progression of returning students to campuses. This is because we have the measures in place and we have demonstrated them, so we can continue. So with regard to 6th grade, at this point in time, we are continuing to plan for a January 11th return. The only caveat I'll put on that is recognizing during this pandemic, January 11th is just about 2 months out. And as we often say with just about any situation, situations can change with a projection that far into the future. We have been and will continue to work with the Santa Clara County Public Health Department on our reopening. We actually spoke with them today to make sure we were on the right track and cleared to reopen. So I'll remind you that we are going to continue with our timeline for 6th grade families making a decision on whether they want to remain where they are or make a switch, either from in-person instruction to our virtual school or from our virtual school back to in-person instruction. We will, of course, as we've been doing for the past 8 months, continue to monitor the situation between now and January 11th and be responsive to any changes and any additional requirements that may come our way. Next slide. Sandra, do you want to go ahead and?
Yep. Absolutely. So I put together kind of an abbreviated version of the slide deck we used at the last board meeting talking about the 6th grade program. So I will run through the slide deck tonight, and then Kimberly, Jeff, and I are available to answer questions so families can really feel like they can make an informed decision by December 7th for us, which would be great. So as we think about returning students to in-person learning, we believe it is important that we are bringing students back on campus. And I absolutely know Kimberly could speak to this later, but the joy of having students back on campus and the social and emotional feeling for not only the students, but our staff has really been tremendous. We are happy that we can still offer a virtual school option for our elementary students, or for all of our students, but through virtual school for our K6, TK6 students. But we are looking forward to finding that nice balance of health and safety while we bring students back to our campuses. Next slide, Marcy. So as we think about, hopefully this slide looks familiar to you. This came from the Santa Clara reopening document, this idea of organizing principle when we look at how we need to bring students back on campus. And our efforts have really been focused at the beginning of the year here around bringing our lower elementary school students on campus. And now as we are bringing our upper elementary, and if we think about sixth grade, as you know, they kind of hover between that upper elementary, but we really run kind of more of a middle school model for our sixth grade program. That organizing principle really changes. And so we will be, along with making sure that families, students, and staff take their health screener prior to arriving on campus, we will be adhering to a signed, stable seat within our sixth grade classrooms. So teachers will have a seating chart that will remain stable, and students will be at a 6-foot spacing between their desks and space and each other and their teacher, 6 foot at all times. And so in our sixth grade program, the idea is that teachers will rotate the classrooms and throughout the 2 classrooms, and students will remain in their 1 classroom and maintain that distance, which we know is certainly a challenge and not like what typical school has looked like in the past. Next slide. As we developed this plan, we worked closely with our sixth grade teachers. We have the best group of sixth grade teachers. And what I love about our sixth grade teachers is that they all seem to really love each other too, which is great. They work very closely together. They meet each and every week from across all of our schools. So we work closely with our sixth grade teachers and our elementary principals to really come up with a plan that we thought provides the best learning opportunity for our really unique sixth grade program. Next slide. So some of the challenges of our sixth grade program when we think about all of the other grade levels that we support in our district, sixth grade is fairly unique for a variety of reasons, but these are the big ones. So at each of our school, our sixth grade program runs a little bit differently. Everybody has rotations, but what content they rotate really changes school by school. And I think our teachers love to be able to have kind of that team mentality and really determine what works best for the strengths of each of our teams. But it does present a challenge when we were developing a plan to have some systematized procedures and processes in place. We certainly know that the challenge of bringing sixth graders back is around being able to monitor that distancing. There was a lot of conversation around what recess or lunch would look like as we considered programs and options coming back. And I know our principals were concerned about the idea of being able to really supervise what that 6-foot distancing during those times might look like. So that was another challenge that we certainly took into consideration. And then finally, just the dense content. You know, each grade has its great complexity and challenges, but when you think about sixth grade, it really creates that big shift between elementary and middle school learning where the content is becoming much more dense and complex and deep, and is different from our single subject junior high school teachers who have a content specialty, and different than our multiple subject K5, TK5 teachers who really focus on all subjects within one class. So we wanted to really think about how we could still continue the great parts of our sixth grade rotations. So we really talked about how can we be creative problem solvers and coming up with a solution that will work best for our students. Next slide. So we considered multiple schedules with a group over a couple different meetings. We brought to them some ideas for A/B schedules, kind of following the model that our elementary K-5 groups are moving forward with, where students would come on a Monday and Tuesday if they were in the A group, or Thursday and Friday if they were in the B group, and have those asynchronous days. So we looked at some schedules like that. We looked at shortened AB days, full AB days, and what that might look like. And then we also looked at a series of AM/PM schedules, where students come either in the morning or the afternoon 4 days a week. Next slide. So we really coalesced around, not everybody, it was not unanimous, but we brought those two ideas, the AB schedule and the AM/PM schedule, ultimately determining there were two that the sixth grade team wanted to bring forward to principals. And through our conversation with principals, we've really landed on this idea of bringing back our sixth graders in an AM/PM schedule. So looking at this creative solution, what that means is that we would have half of our class designated in the AM group, half of our class designated into that PM group. Students would come onto campus for 2 hours and 45 minutes in the morning. There would be time for disinfecting our 2 classrooms at each of our school sites to prepare for that PM group coming later that day. Next slide, please, Marcy, goes into a little bit more of a detail. So if you were on the AM schedule, you would come, as you can see, and again, these times are approximate because each of our schools will work with their staggered schedules and start. But if you look at it as a whole, that Monday AM cohort would come in the morning. They would have their time in class, perhaps with one of their teachers each day, perhaps with both of their teachers each day. Again, in that stable cohort in their stable seat, and at a 6-foot distance, they'd then be dismissed. They'd have time to travel home and time to have lunch. And then their teacher would have assigned them some asynchronous work to complete their school day, because it still is a complete school day. So they would follow that same schedule: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And Wednesday would certainly remain an asynchronous day, very similar to what our Wednesday, or identical to what our Wednesdays look like right now. Next slide, you can see what that might look like on the PM version of this. So students would start their morning with that asynchronous work that their teacher had assigned the day before. To prepare to come onto campus, they would have their lunch, they would travel to campus, and then spend their afternoon getting that great instructional experience before leaving for the end of the day. Next slide, please. So as we, sorry, I have to move my little marker here. As we look at just some different things we considered, the teachers and principals ultimately landing on this AM/PM schedule, was this idea that it really allows for that frequent in-person time. I know many of our 6th grade teachers, just with the level of depth of the content, really worried about having 3 fully asynchronous days, and really like the idea of having the flexibility as a teacher team on each of our elementary campuses to really be able to flex based on the needs of the students. So, you know, in a particular week, whereas in our junior high schedules, we are really consistent with, you know, math happens at this time and reading happens at this time and science happens at this time. The greatness of having these terrific multiple subject specialist teachers is that they can really flex their schedule week by week to meet the needs of kids. they are looking forward to doing that. And then really with that AM PM schedule, it does provide minimal break time and supervision time. So we do, and we've talked with principals, and I know we will certainly talk with teachers about making sure that we do have great social opportunities for our students beyond just the academic social opportunities that happen naturally. But we certainly were all very aware that this is different than every other schedule coming out. And so this could be disruptive to our families. Next slide, Marcy. But ultimately, as I said, we did move forward with a recommendation for the AM PM program. I do believe it will provide the best program we can provide at this time for our sixth graders. It is certainly possible for us and very doable for us to disinfect our 2 rooms on campus each day. And I do know that we will be working hard to make sure that there are great social opportunities for students once we are back. Next slide. So next steps for families, we're really looking to make sure that you contact your principal on or before, ideally December 7th, if you want a change to virtual school. This is assuming that you are enrolled in your homeschool right now. So if you want to move to virtual school, you need to let us know by December 7th. We have amazing virtual 6th grade teachers who are working right in line with our in-person teachers. If you're in virtual school and you're ready to come back in person, also please let your principal know by December 7th. I think that might be my last slide, and we are ready to take some questions. That was the speed version.
Our first speaker is Maya Markin.
Hi, Mara, you need to unmute.
Sorry about that. I have twins at Gardner-Bullis. And what we've seen with the younger grade levels is that a lot of the kids have shifted to virtual. And in many of the grades, there's only one classroom. How would the model work if that were to happen in 6th grade?
Excellent question, Maya. It would, I really do not want to have to collapse a class in 6th grade because our model is built around those rotations. My plan right now is not to have to collapse a class. And so we certainly, I know right now, have the capacity in virtual school to take in a good number of 6th graders if they choose to move virtual. And then we will have to look at what our options are if that does not happen.
I like the option. I think it's really creative, and I appreciate the thought that went into it.
Thanks, Maya.
Our next speaker is Jill Woodford.
Hi, I'm just curious, is there some kind of procedure for when the students arrive on campus? Specifically, will we still be able to walk and bike to school?
Kimberly, do you want to talk about that?
So I will be meeting shortly with our operational team once this is decided upon and really working out plans. Currently, we do have plans for students to be able to walk, bike to school, to be dropped off. And I'm, encouraging for parents to be able to not be on campus because that adds a gathering factor, which we are, trying to avoid gathering of anything. You see your friends and you want to talk. So for students arriving to school, we all have different plans on what that looks like. With this, it's a little bit different because children would be arriving in the middle of the day and leaving in the middle of the day. So we do need to work that out. I don't think it's impossible to do. Looking at our different facilities, each school's a little bit different, but we all have operational teams that will gather together that include classified staff, teachers, administration, and making a plan to address that as soon as we can, as soon as we know that this is the definite plan of where we're going and we get through the holiday.
Okay, thank you. It would just be really helpful because for us, we've never driven to school, and that's really important for us to be able to walk and bike. And even if I'm not allowed on campus, that's totally fine. Or if there are specific inlets that they're allowed to come onto campus, that's also fine. But it would change our decision probably about whether we would come back or whether we would do remote learning, because I'm not willing to drive to school every day.
Yes, and I think we want to encourage our students to be able to, especially our sixth graders, for many of the campuses, they're really accessible. There are some campuses that's a little bit trickier and according to the boundary. But most of our campus they have multiple access points, and we can explore those to be able to get the children on safely. And be able to put their bike away or walk to school safely. So we are definitely allowing our kindergarten through fifth grade students to walk and bike to school. So I can't imagine we wouldn't let the same thing happen for our sixth graders.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, Jill, I don't anticipate there being any requirement that children be driven to school. That won't happen.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. I just wasn't sure if there was like some kind of check-in sanitation process that had to happen at the front of the school or anything. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Kim Karan.
Kim, you need to unmute.
Go ahead, Kim. Marcy, let's come back to Kim. Let's go on to Vi.
Our next speaker is Vi Wang.
Or Jeanette Ring. There we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Hi there.
Great. So I was just wondering, a big part of going to school in person is the social aspect. And I wasn't sure, based on the schedule you had presented, if there would be any opportunity for the kids to interact, or are they just going to campus and just learning? Not that that's also very important, but it's very important to also socialize as well.
Absolutely. I know we've chatted with principals about finding some opportunities, whether that could be an extended day where kids might stay for lunch or some type of social opportunity. I don't know, Kimberly, if you've done any brainstorming with your team.
Yes, we've talked about some ideas of ways of bringing cohorts back, but with the parameters of keeping students 6 feet apart. That's the big sticky point with sixth graders coming onto campus. So we've talked about ideas of, I know at one of the schools, our staff really like this idea of students writing messages on different parts of the blacktop to our younger students. And so that students are there, they're separated, but they're still able to talk to each other and be around each other safely and follow the guidelines. We've talked about doing some activities where kids are at set tables where they might be writing letters to people in the community and kind of reaching out and giving back. But kids are spaced apart by 6 feet and still are able to communicate with each other, socialize, but do something as a way of giving back to our community. So we have some great ideas. And that would be more of a considered like an extended part of the school day. In addition, even though students are in the classroom 6 feet apart, they still can collaborate. They still can, our classrooms have the space to be able to collaborate still and remain 6 feet apart. And so part of that collaboration, it can be under academic guise, but it can still be that social part that kids thrive upon. One thing I've seen for our students currently, just being with other students face to face has made a big difference for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my daughter's already back and she really missed all her friends. So it's really exciting to see. So I'm really hoping that the 6th graders will be able to go back. And I don't know if they'll have the opportunity to, if they're, in the morning session, if they can stay on campus and eat lunch with some of their friends, or will they have to leave immediately?
So that's the tricky part, is the kids have to be 6 feet apart at all times for 6th grade. And that's a harder task to ensure. So that's not something that we are looking at. From my understanding, Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not something that we're looking at, having kids be on campus.
Not regularly. It might be a special social activity day, but not on the regular.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeanette Ring.
Good evening. I'm the parent of a 6th grader, and I'm also a kinder aide at Covington. In fact, you can probably hear my class from the district office during recess, as I'm usually the one chasing my kids around, because I believe play is an important part of education. And I want to thank you for thinking about the social opportunities for 6th graders when they do come back on campus. Also, I know that logistics regarding getting to school was briefly touched upon in the last meeting. And I'm wondering if any more time was spent thinking on this. I know I'm probably in the minority, but we do not live close to our home school of Springer, and the streets that connect our home to our school are more than 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, I do think it's something, somebody had a great suggestion at the board meeting around trying to work with principals to organize geographical groups who might live close by together, to whether that might be some pandemically safe carpooling or a bike train or something like that to help support those students getting to and from school. So we will continue to kind of figure out and flesh out. And if you have an idea, we'd love to hear it, Jeanette.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your hard work.
Our next speaker is Sangam Desai.
Hi, yeah, I had a question about the cohorts that were decided upon at the beginning of the year. Are those still the same, and do they map cohort A to AM, cohort B to PM?
Yeah, great question. I don't know the answer to that. We have not talked with principals about that. And I know with each rotation that's come back, there's had to be some rebalancing depending on how many students might have opted into our virtual program. So I think it's something we need to perhaps put on our agenda for tomorrow with principals to have them start thinking about what that might look like. And I think it will become more clear after December 7th when each of our schools has a sense of what are the numbers that they're looking at to bring students back on campus.
Okay, there's also an issue of it mapping for those of us that have students in junior high as well, to get some consistency from that point of view. And also somebody mentioned safety of kids getting to and from school. Since kids will be coming and going at much more often than they normally do, have arrangements been made for additional crossing guards during the multiple times?
Can we get crossing guards during the day, Jeff? Do you know how that might work?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. It's something I'd have to look into. I'm not sure about that. but we can certainly look at it. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lena Deshpande.
Good evening, board. Really great news on having kids back in school, and especially for all those having this interaction with the teachers. Can or have you considered making this all 5 days with no asynchronous day, since you're doing it for all 4? I'm just not the opinion that more the better. So.
We have not considered it, honestly. I know having meeting regularly with our teachers that right now the Wednesday, in order to balance the planning load and the changing of curriculum load to support both asynchronous and virtual synchronous teaching, our teachers are really valuing that Wednesday day. As a day where we're asking them to be more aligned than they've ever been. They're using identical content that they are all creating. We need that Wednesday for our teachers this year.
Always, thank you.
Our next speaker is Stacy Stillman.
Hi, can y'all hear me okay?
Hi, Stacy. Yep.
Hi, great. I thank you for shifting to 4 half days from 2 live days. I think that's a great change. I just had 2 suggestions. One is to follow up with the gentleman who asked whether A and B cohorts would correlate to morning and afternoon. The sooner you can give us an answer on that, the better. It is a major change for those of us who scheduled around the thought of 2 days a week.
Yep.
It would be live for full days. That would be really great. And then the other thought the previous person just mentioned about Wednesdays, even if the teachers are not available, I think it would be beneficial to have meets with the cohort, with the students collaborating perhaps on Wednesdays, and please consider that.
Great, thank you.
Our next speaker is Kim Karan.
Thank you. I was having technology issues before. Thank you very much.
Hi, Kim.
So first of all, thank you for everything. We as parents, we can see how hard everyone's working. So any comments or criticism is not personal. And we really know this is just super challenging. So my question is around the content that the children are learning right now. So right now I have a 6th grader at Gardner, and amazing 6th grade teachers. And, he's learning pretty much all day long, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. That's going really well. So my concern around bringing him back to campus is not the COVID issue so much as the fact that he will lose half of his learning, because he'll only be on campus 2.5 hours or 245 hours a day. And I don't understand how that compares to the virtual school where the kids do learn 4.5 days a week. So I'm hoping someone can talk about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. So I want you to think of the AM or PM as a portion of learning for the day. And it certainly is a trade-off. I think families need to decide if they want to make for their child. You're giving up some additional synchronous time by having the in-person experience. And we just can't offer both. Unfortunately, we don't have the space or the staff to be offering full day based on the current health guidelines and restrictions. But our teachers are looking forward to this AM/PM model to be able to kind of better, I don't know how your child is doing with the asynchronous portion of learning, but to be able to better assign, support, preview, prepare kids as they leave for the day to go and complete their asynchronous learning. And then that next morning they're there and they expect that work has been done, that they've watched their videos or whatever that they needed to do and engage in at their at-home time. So it is, yeah, Kimberly.
I actually spoke, Kim, I spoke to our teachers this week about this same topic. How is it going to benefit the students? And some of the things that they said, they gave me a lot of information. And one of the things that they said, they talked about that connectivity with your child, and having that. They do have it virtually, but it looks different than it does in person. And they talked about that connection to your child and being able to help them navigate better in person than they can virtually. And they really feel like that's going to be very valuable for your child's learning. In addition, they can do things now in person during those 4 days that they couldn't possibly maybe do virtually, such as labs, hands-on kinds of activities to really reinforce learning. That's super difficult in a virtual setting, that 4 days a week. So those were kind of speaking to that point. Those were two things that came up that really resonated for them as teachers at our school. And as Sandra mentioned, those teachers all work very closely together and have work very closely on a curriculum and meeting together and talking about ideas and how to support students across the district.
Can I ask a second part to my question? How does it work with the CC6, CC7 math for our those kids who are in the separate math track?
Again, each team might think of the way to do this differently because they all have their own way of doing it. But I would expect that there will be a math period most days of the week. That could be that kids are split by their math group. It could be that kids are in their normal homeroom math group, and some of the kids will be doing math and some of them will be working on something else while the teachers switch. Some of our schools have one teacher who teaches all of the math. Some of our schools have two teachers who teach the math. So it will look a little bit different for each of our schools, but everybody will continue to get great math instruction.
So again, these answers are great and they're really, really appreciated. It just feels like the devil's in the details. And without more information, it's going to be very challenging to make a decision. So when will we get, when specifically will specific schools get answers on things like AM, PM cohorts, math cohorts? When do we get that information? Is it before we make the decision, or do we just kind of guess?
We can work with principals to talk about the AM, PM cohorting. I'm not sure your math.
Well, I guess my question is, are the cohorts going to be organized? Is my child going to have to get up and move around and have to move to a different math class, or will the cohorts be worked around that?
The cohort will be stable. So our students will be cohorted with one group for the day. The teachers will be rotating. They may have math with their teacher when, whether that's over the computer, whether that's in person, most likely. But I
don't understand that.
Okay.
Well, but if my son's sitting in a group of 10 kids and I'm just making, I have no idea how many kids are in CC6 versus CC6-7, but if half of them are CC6 and half of them are CC6-7, how does that work?
So it could be, depending on the particular unit, it could be that the teacher is doing a whole group type of math. It could be that the teacher comes in and is only teaching math to 5 of the 10 kids that are in the room at that point in time, and the other 5 kids are doing something different.
Okay, again, the devil's in the details, and it sounds like detail. It's hard. I'm not, please don't think my questions are criticism. No. This is just tough stuff to figure out. And I think there's just, the more we ask questions, the more we understand how hard this is.
I get it. And I think an additional challenge / benefit of the 6th grade program is it's not going to look the same every day. And that really is a benefit of our 6th grade program. The kids will always remain stable and the 2 teachers will remain stable and move from room to room. But the content and the experience for kids is really going to vary based on what's happening in each content area over the course of that week. But yes, the devil is in the details for sure.
Okay, sorry, I'm sure other parents have other questions. And again, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate this. And this is just a hard situation.
I hear you.
Our next speaker is Kara Jarawala.
Hi there, 2 boys wrestling. Thank you so much for taking my questions. Excuse the background noise.
Sounds like my house.
Oh my goodness. What is the hygiene protocol for coming back to school? That is one question I've not heard. I am very concerned that we're seeing numbers with kids. I personally have a 11-year-old cousin now down with COVID and 3 weeks locked up in their bedroom. This is happening to our kids now. What are the checks at school? Are there temperature checks daily? Are we sanitizing? Are we wearing face shields and masks? And part 2 of that question is what happens when a family in the cohort comes down with COVID? How is that communicated? How is that executed? How are we made aware? Is the whole cohort tested for COVID? Is the thing shut down? What does that look like? In order to make a decision, I need to know what the practices along those lines are. Thank you so much.
Great. Jeff, did you wanna, was that
Yeah,
good?
I'll take part of it. Hi, Kara. So masks are required. Well, let's start with the beginning of the day. Each day before students and staff arrive on campus, there's a requirement of completing a symptom tracker. And that information is sent immediately to the office, and the school offices are checking prior to the start of school to make sure everyone has completed that before arrival on campus. While on campus, all students have to wear masks. They're remaining 6 feet apart. We have hand washing, hand hygiene built into the day as well. In terms of if there was a positive case, there are a number of variations of what can happen. I'll give you a couple, and you can ask if I don't answer the situation you're thinking of. But if a student tests positive, that the rest of that cohort, the student obviously is quarantined for 14 days. The rest of that cohort, since there is stable seating, determination is made which of the children in that cohort are within that 6 foot distance. Sandra, am I right here? This is similar to junior high school, right? Since there's stable seating.
Yep.
Which of those children are within the 6 foot radius of that child seating? Those children are also quarantined, right? 14-day quarantine and recommended to have a COVID test after 5 to 7 days. Those are the groups that are quarantined, right? This varies a bit from the transitional kindergarten through 5th grade, where there is not a requirement of stable seating. So I'll stop there and see if that answers the question, or if there's more detail you want, Kara.
Just one more question on that. Is it required by the law then for the parent of the infected parent household or the infected student to report it?
Absolutely. That's
Okay,
actually
thank you.
that's actually a legal requirement from Santa Clara County Public Health Department.
Our next speaker is Kristen Najarian.
And let me just, hi, Kristen, before you go, let me just add on to that from the previous question, Kara's question. It's also a requirement if there is a check on that, if there is a positive test, the testing lab is also required to report that to Santa Clara County Public Health.
Hi, Jeff, and Sandra and Kimberly. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know I was on the call yesterday, so I know every day it's it's a lot of work on your end. So thank you so much. Question regarding the school day. So I understand that will be, if you're blended, 2 hours and 45 minutes in the morning or in the afternoon. And I know obviously the priorities will be given to the math and science, history, and English. And I was wondering, are there, I know that right now it sounds like it's fluid, it's flexible, what the teachers will be teaching. I know right now they're doing a little bit of PE, they're doing a little bit of band. And I see it says asynchronous. So I know that the PE and the band is not currently asynchronous. So my first question was regarding those sort of auxiliary, I'd say important yet auxiliary subject matters, if they're going to have that at all, whether it be in person or something just on their own. I don't know how you do band on your own. Second question is around just sixth grade tradition. I know it's a big deal to be in sixth grade at LASD. It's unlike other districts where fifth grade's the big deal. And I know sixth graders would typically be doing things such as, you know, plays, and obviously end of the school, have a lot of traditions around that. Obviously tradition around the Halloween parade, they're going to be missing quite a bit, probably JOs. I'm assuming that's not going to happen. So are there, I know it's hard to get sixth graders together given COVID, but are there any thoughts around once we get through the hardcore academic questions and get through January transition, are there thoughts about how do we then focus on some of the fun, the social stuff for sixth grade, or is it just not attainable this year? I just want to set the stage and expectations for my sixth grader.
Yep, I'll start with the first part around, we call them specials, often the PE and the music and the computer science. Those will be identical to what your child is experiencing this year so far. So they will continue with their synchronous online PE, music, computer science, CSTEM class. And that would happen on we're trying to work out our schedules right now, but that would happen on their at-home time. So either on that Wednesday, or if they're in the AM group, they would have PE during their PM asynchronous time at home, or music or what have you, and vice versa. So we plan to continue that. The schedule will certainly change for students, but they will still have access to all those great special courses that we know rounds out our program. And then about the special sixth grade experience, it is something we've been talking about. Kimberly, I don't know if you have anything to add. I know right now we're looking at a virtual science camp experience, which science camp is another one of those big sixth grade things. So we're trying to do some research around what that might look like. Anything to add, Kimberly?
Yeah, I put in our design challenge this year. We usually, each school has their own little special things, right? And at Oak, we do a spooktacular where the kids, deck out our multi, and they have these plays and they create a scene, a kind of a spooky scene in a haunted house. Well, we couldn't, of course, do that. So instead, we encouraged our sixth graders to do, we combined the effort around the design STEM challenge and had them create kind of a spooky design build STEM challenge. We're trying to find ways of making connections to what they have done in the past with our traditions the best that we can, especially as we get into our springtime, looking at some virtual field trips that are aligning, even though they're content-based, they still have been very special to our kids. Like, how can we still bring those into our curriculum and have that experience for our children? How can we still have a virtual party at the end of the year? How can we do these things to make things special for our kids, especially our sixth graders? Because we do know this is an important year for them, and we don't want that to be lost on things.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for thinking of that, because I know last year was just so hard on the sixth graders and anybody graduating from anything, frankly. But yeah, it was just too fast to be able to put all that social stuff in place. But now we have a little bit of time to think about it. But obviously academics is the main focus right now, but it would be great.
Yeah, Kristen, I agree with everything Kimberly said and what you said as well. It is on the radar. It's just that I think we're feeling pretty good that we're thinking a month out right now, and 5 weeks out right now. But that's definitely on the radar, and we know it's coming up in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Our next speaker is Rashmi Muno.
Hi, thank you for taking the time for my question. I think I wanted to follow up on Kara's question earlier about protocol for testing and what happens after testing or after testing positive. Specifically, I think one of y'all mentioned that if a family tests positive or one member of the family tests positive, we notify the school, and of course the county will notify through the testing lab as well. And the kid has to stay home, and the neighboring kids in their proximity have to stay home. What happens to learning at that point? They then switch to virtual for the next 14 days or the period of quarantine, or at that point it's a 14-day gap?
I think it's important, Rashmi, are you talking about the child and children who have been quarantined?
Yes.
Okay, Sandra, go ahead.
But we also want to be clear, if a family member is positive, students in the cohort would not quarantine. Do you want to?
Only so so this is, I mean, this is really what happens here, right? We have to go through this close contact description. If a parent tests positive, and I think we will get to your question, Rashmi, I promise you, but there's a couple of additional points here from that earlier question as well that came to mind as you were asking your question. If a parent tests positive, the child of that parent is a close contact, so that child is going to have to quarantine as well. In terms of notifications, I think that's something I didn't touch on when I think it was Kara asked her earlier question. There is notification that goes out, right? Those children or people who, because sometimes it's staff as well, those people who are close contacts, they get notified as well that they're going to have to quarantine. We also notify the rest of that cohort as well. Not that they have to quarantine, but just that there has been a close contact situation. And then we do send out a notification to the entire school just to let them know that there has been a case on campus, right? And that we are, I think in all the communications, we do work to get the message across that we are prepared for this. Not that we ever want this to happen, but we understand that the pandemic is widespread. So we will see cases periodically. And what we are ensuring we do is have all the mitigation measures in place to prevent the spread on campus. I'll say additionally, on the Los Altos School District website, if you click on the coronavirus information tab, you will find a dashboard that is reporting on a week-by-week basis any case that we have had within the school district. And to this point, we have had one case within LASD, a student at Almond, and that was last week. But we've had no spread since then either, so the mitigation measures appear to be working effectively. So with regard to what happens instructionally, Sandra?
Yep. So we certainly wouldn't want learning to stop for 2 weeks, and we would also not want to switch your child to virtual school temporarily for 2 weeks. So we've really designed our learning program this year around our learning plans, which hopefully you've seen your child using. So we would work with your teacher to make sure that student has access to those learning plans and that there was some type of a check-in every day with the teacher to make sure that your child was keeping on track.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Hilda Chan.
Hello, this is Hilda. I have a 3rd grader and a 6th grader at Springer. My 3rd grader returned to campus last week and she said it was so much better to be in person. So I want to thank all the preparation that your team has made for the lower grades and now making this special hybrid plan for our 6th grader. My question is related to cohorting in stable groups while allowing the CC6 and CC6-7 math that was discussed earlier. I attended the board meeting last Monday. You mentioned that math for junior high is taught virtually because you don't want the kids to be cohorted by math path so that they can be in person for better balance. I really like that approach because they are going to be learning in person with students with different strengths and personalities. Is it the same intent that our 6th graders won't be cohorted by math path? And then the school teams will figure out another solution to give different levels of math instruction within the stable group?
I think that is the goal, certainly. That it was a lot of conversation about with 6th grade, knowing that math is big within our community. We don't have the luxury of having many teachers like our junior high school to be able to offer one model or the other. But the intention or the hope is that students will be more heterogeneously grouped. That being said, some of our math level classes, I think each of our individual schools is really going to make a decision that they feel like the group of students coming in would work best together. So I don't want to put an absolute no on that, but I don't think it will be a common way of grouping students.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jessica Shepard.
Hi, thank you for answering all these questions. And I have a question about the start date. Jeff had mentioned the quarantine for 14 days. So it made me think with the winter break, if maybe we're considering starting 2 weeks after New Year's. So if families are considering seeing their families in California. I mean, I know we're not, but I didn't know if other families were, and then to just push it back so you would have those 14 days.
You want to answer that one, Jeff?
Yeah, yes. Thanks for the comment. We did look at that, and we did decide to go with the 7-day pause on it. And we do have what are they calling it? Recommendation from the county and the state on that quarantine idea. But we do want to, we are looking at the timing, and this seemed to be the most effective timing in getting our 6th graders back into class in person. Sandra, is there any more on that?
Well, I know we've been having lots of conversations around travel, around risky behaviors, whether or not you're traveling. And so I know Jeff has continued to urge everybody in our community to kind of do their part. If you know that you will be returning back to campus, that you perhaps come home before New Year's Eve, and if your family has, you know, done some of those riskier behaviors or what have you, that we really hope that our families are mitigating their risks for the entire good of our community.
And as principals, I think we're all putting things in our newsletters this week, referring to, because it's not just travel. I was just talking to one of our nurses today. It's sometimes, you know, there could be safe situations where you're not exposing yourself to a lot of risk by driving up to like a personal house in another community, bringing all your food there. And that's not as risky as it is having 3 families over that are outside of your household. So we all have things in our newsletter about it this week to remind our families the recommendation from the county and our commitment and sacrifices that we are all making as staff and families so that we can continue to bring kids back to school. That's our goal, is to be with your children, and we're hoping that people will follow those guidelines so we can continue and be safe together.
And I'll also point out, we do have, you know, with great thanks to El Camino Hospital, we do have available in our community, free of charge for anyone, the ability to get tested. So I think another, you know, another opportunity is, if you know you're going to be traveling, to plan for that test right now, right on, you know, January 8th or so, and you will have the results back by the time school starts on the 11th, right? There are a variety of opportunities. And I just point out also that we do have, hopefully you've seen the email communications, we do have testing available on site twice a month for staff who are on campus and for students going to school on campus. So parents are welcome to take advantage of that as well. The site rotates between Covington, Egan, and Block each time. So I would keep your eyes open for that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Our next speaker is Heidi Melander.
Hi, this is Heidi. You just actually answered. I was wondering about the testing. Do you remind me, are teachers testing once a month?
Yeah, we are strong. We can't require, but we are strongly suggesting, and many are, to get tested once a month. And they can actually get tested anyone can actually get tested every 14 days if they'd like to. Yeah, I really recommend I'll do a little sales pitch. It is easy. It is not the long swab. It's the short swab that just goes just inside your nostril. You do it yourself. It is painless, and nothing like you see on television driving through with that long swab, with the drive-throughs. It is, it's very simple. Results back via app within 2 to 3 days now on a regular basis. It's like clockwork. I really recommend, our El Camino Hospital in this community is providing that to our community free of charge. I highly recommend you take advantage of it just for that knowledge. All right, I'm done with my PSA.
This Friday.
Right, this Friday.
Yep.
The walk up at El Camino is just as quick. Easy to make that appointment too. Any other questions? Oh, just.
And Jeff, families can make that appointment at El Camino as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I had some cohort B families worried because it was only on Fridays. It was a little trickier to get their elementary kids there, but it's great. I'll make sure to share with our families that they can make an appointment at El Camino.
Yep. And hopefully you've seen it's available throughout our community too, through the county, also free of charge. I think the next one in Los Altos is at Grant Park on Thursday of this week, tomorrow. Any other questions? All right. With that, we thank you for spending part of your Wednesday evening with us. We know that one of the hallmarks of our community is interest and commitment to and dedication to the education of our children, and we're certainly a partner with you in that. So we appreciate you being here, and we do look forward to, if you choose, having your children back on campus. I know each and every one of the kids who is returning to campus is enjoying it. I've had the opportunity to substitute principal a couple of times this fall, and it is just a joy to see kids back on campus. And but if you don't, we understand that as well. These are personal decisions that you have to make. We are pleased to be able to offer both right now. And if you haven't done it, I really encourage you to give a shout out to your teacher. They are they're doing incredible work right now, and they are each and every one of them needing to retool their entire cadre of lessons, which is, Sandra mentioned it earlier, it's why that Wednesday is so important, but they are literally having to rebuild everything they're doing each and every week in preparation to have our kids either virtually or in person. So just wanted to make sure that recognition is there, especially since we are in the season of thanks. So thank you to you, and thank you to your teachers as well. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.